Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel and Army General Raul Castro in Havana. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg visited Kiev for the first time since the launch of this Russian special operation in February last year. Despite the new ceasefire announcement, violent clashes persist in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Heidi Maurel from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov assured that Moscow is ready to strengthen trade and economic cooperation with Cuba. After the meeting between the Russian Foreign Minister and his Cuban counterpart Bruno Rodriguez, President Diaz-Canel and Army General Raul Castro in Havana, Lavrov gave a press conference to inform about the issues agreed between Russia and Cuba. Lavrov said that during the meeting they discussed the bilateral relations between the two countries. They also discussed additional areas such as development and enhancement of trade and economic cooperation. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that they held fruitful negotiations with Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel.
I would like to point out that our visit to Cuba has been very fruitful because we have held negotiations with President Diaz-Canel, also with Army General Raul Castro and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla. Also, our visit coincides with an emblematic event, the session of the 10th convening of the National Assembly of People's Power, during which the President was elected and also other peoples of the leadership of Cuba.
In turn, the Russian Foreign Minister said that during the meeting with Diaz-Canel, they confirmed agreement previously reached in 2022.
We also talked about a wide range of issues of bilateral relations, and the agreements reached during Diaz-Canel's visit in November last year were confirmed.
Bolivian President Luis Arce arrived on Thursday at the Venezuelan Simon Bolívar's International Airport in Maiquetía to promote bilateral integration and cooperation. The Bolivian head of state will attend to the third Bolivian-Venezuela Joint Integration Commission to consolidate important mutual cooperation agreements for the benefit of both countries. The parties are expected to sign around 10 agreements to ratify bilateral relations. In this sense, Bolivian Foreign Minister Rogelio Maita stated that the Joint Integration Commission has been working for several months on preparatory meetings through the subcommissions, focusing their attention on political and social shapers spheres, as well as economic and commercial issues. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, announced on Thursday $1 billion climate fund at the virtual meeting with leaders from the world's bigger industrialized nations. The U.S. President acknowledged the serious impact of the climate change and insisted that large economies and large emitters must step up. According to expert sources, the United States ranks second by CO2 emissions in 2021 in the 184-country ranking of the countries by CO2 emissions, in which countries are ordered from less polluting to most polluting. The Biden administration publicly advocates they will reduce U.S. emissions by 50% by 2030 as part of the global efforts under the Paris Climate Agreement to limit global temperature rise to 1.5% Celsius. However, U.S. environmental activist groups have denounced that the current presidency has approved oil drilling projects inconsistent with Biden's promises to lead global climate action. According to the budget for the 2023 in the United States, Biden administration will allot only $40,600 million to attend to drought, hurricanes, floods, fires, and other natural disasters, an emergency in the United States. As a direct consequence of the ecological crisis, a figure that is much less than the almost $2 billion that the White House has sent to Ukraine since the start of the armed conflict, and justified increases by 9.3% in the military budget over the previous year. According to the National Office on Oceanic and Atmospheric Management, in 2022 natural disaster in the United States saw 18 extreme weather events for an estimated $165,000 in a total cost. These extreme disasters caused at least 474 fatalities in 2022. And let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on TikTok account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg visited Kiev for the first time since the launch of the Russian special operation in last February. So far, the exact purpose of Stoltenberg's trip remains undisclosed. A spokesman of the NATO alliance informed the press about the visit of the Secretary-General to Ukraine and assured to give more information as soon as possible. Stoltenberg's visit to Ukraine comes at the final stage of preparation for the meeting at the U.S. military base in Germany in Ramstein, where measures of military support to Ukraine will be discussed before the expected counteroffensive by the Ukrainian army. NATO has repeatedly stressed as an organization that is not at war with Russia, despite the practical assistance and material support that its members provide the government of Kiev. During his visit, Stoltenberg noted that so far NATO members countries have supported Ukraine to the tune of 150,000 million euros, and they have stepped up their supply of fighter jets, tanks, and armored vehicles, all of which is having a decisive influence at the battlefield. Italy, Russia had sent NATO countries a note in which Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that any shipment, including weapons destined for Kiev, will become a legitimate target for Russian troops. Lavrov said that by NATO countries supplying weapons to Ukraine, they are playing with fire and has long spoken of direct involvement of NATO countries in supplying weapons and training to Ukrainian troops. Russia has urged the United States to issue visas to its diplomats and journalists for them to be able to attend the session of the United Nations Security Council. Russian Ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, demanding from the administration of President Joe Biden to immediately issue visas to a number of Russian diplomats and journalists who were scheduled to attend the UN Security Council sessions at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Ambassador Antonov denounced that the American authorities are only willing to respect the proclaimed principle of freedom of speech and of press as long as those do not come to order with their short-term interest. The Russian ambassador emphasized that he proved the double standard of the U.S. administration. Climate activists were detained in Berlin on Tuesday after blocking several streets demanding climate action on road regulation. Around 20 activists from the Last Generation group glued their hands to the road in front of the Opera House in the German capital before police removed the glue and carried them away. Protesters also blocked traffic around the iconic Brandenburg Gate and near the Potsdamer Platz. The activists demanded speed limits on motorways without restrictions. They also sought to establish a social council with politicians to accelerate meeting climate targets by 2030. The Vatican inaugurated a new Arts and Craft Academy inside St. Peter's Basilica, which revives a century-old apprenticeship systems that trained stonemasons, carpenters, and artisans to care for the treasures in the world's biggest Catholic church. The ceremony came after the first 20 students in the academy have a throat that amounts to a 6-month unpaid internship. They attend lectures, participate in hands-on workshops, and learn various trade and technical skills under the guidance of the Basilica San Petriani, a group of workers who maintain the building. The academy is free to students and is open to high school graduates. Organizers say that the current students, 12 men and 80 women, came from Italy, Peru, Germany, and Belarus.
The objective is to train young artisans, to teach young people subjects and professions that no one knows anymore, that are disappearing, and traditions which we do not want lost. So, as was done in the past, the Fábrica di San Pietro is going to be available for the younger generations to hand down the experience, the art, the know-how that has been acquired over 5 centuries of history. It is definitely a big emotion. Every day, you never get used to the pace of the Basilica. You never get used to the context in that it is truly monumental and recognized around the world. So it is always a big emotion.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now turn in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy a Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. The South. On Thursday, local media in Sudan confirmed that despite a new ceasefire announcement, clashes persist in Khartoum, capital of Sudan. The WHO has raised to nearly 3,000 the number of civilians killed since the start of the conflict between military rivals that left Sudan in one of its worst situations in recent years. A new 24-hour truce began on Wednesday to allow civilians to return safely to their families and get the emergency supplies they needed, but it has not been respected. The international community and aid groups are demanding guarantees to be able to provide aid to civilians trapped after 6 days of heavy urban fighting. Meanwhile, in Sudan, residents in Khartoum assure that there is no place safe because the shelling has not stopped and they have no confidence in any ceasefire agreement.
I'm not optimistic about the ceasefire. We've tried this for a while. We've tried this, I think, 3 or 4 times. There hasn't been a ceasefire. Not one of the parties is honoring these proclaimed ceasefires. Shelling hasn't stopped. Shelling hasn't stopped in the areas of conflict in Khartoum, which are even hard to define at the moment. But there are places that are, we can say, worse than others. But at the same time, we can't say that there's any one place that is really safe.
In Yemen, at least 80 people were killed and 120 others were injured on Thursday after a human stampede at the Humanitarian Aid Distribution Center in the capital, Sana'a. The Ministry of the Interior said in a statement that the dead and injured were taken to nearby hospitals and the people responsible for the charity distribution were taken into the police custody. In this regard, officials detailed that the event is unprecedented, given that the assistance is delivered periodically in the same establishment without any incidents having been reported so far. At the same time, the Supreme Political Council of the Houthi movement, which controls the capital, conveyed its condolences to the families of the deceased and ordered that a commission be set up to investigate events. Africa's first molecular vaccine center was inaugurated on Thursday in the Cape Town, South Africa, described by the WHO as a landmark move to help poor countries gain access to life-saving vaccines. Authorities emphasized that the center has already established laboratory-scale production of mRNA vaccines and is currently scaling up and validating the production of Moderna injections on a commercial scale elsewhere. They also emphasized that the center's other function is to serve as a guide to manufacturers in poor countries, helping them to acquire the know-how of mRNA vaccines manufactured in the large quantities and in accordance with international standards. According to the Centers for the Disease Control and Prevention, just over 50% of Africa's 1.2 billion people are fully vaccinated against the coronavirus. The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, praised the project and said it will be a paradigm shift in addressing the serious problems of inequity and access to health care that assured was intensified during the pandemic.
WHO believes that the mRNA technology transfer program holds huge promise, not just for increasing access to vaccines against COVID-19, but for other diseases, including HIV, tuberculosis, as well as other diseases affecting lower and middle-income countries for which there are either no vaccines or the vaccines are insufficient.
This mRNA Hub program is the only one in the world. It is the global mRNA technology transfer program that straddles 4 continents and includes 15 countries in the partnership.
In Venezuela, the 5th ALBA Games are already in a reality, scheduled to take place from April 21st to 29th in Caracas, as the main venue and others as La Guaira and Miranda. The flags of Antigua and Barbuda, Bolivia, Cuba, Dominica, Grenada, Nicaragua, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucie, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Venezuela, and Russia, the guest country, were hoisted on Wednesday night in the Teo Capriles Velodrome. The official website of the multi-sport event highlights that the cease ceremony symbolizes the union that should exist among the participating nations on a historic date for all Venezuelans. 2013 years after the cry for independence. During the ceremony, Ninosca Cloxier, president of the National Sports Institute of Venezuela, highlighted the brotherhood and solidarity of ALBA TCP. And we have come to the end of this CSU Brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I am Heidi Maurel. Thank you for watching.